Welcome back to Unsupervised. I'm Savannah,
And I'm Gabby.
and today we're talking about.
Authenticity.
I knew I wanted to be friends with you when I first heard you talk, not because you were loud, or because you were super confident, or because you were super pretty, but because I knew right away that you were real. Like, real recognizes real, and you weren't trying to impress anyone. It doesn't matter what room you're in, who you're around, you're gonna be the same person no matter what environment, and that's rare. And because like I also feel like I'm very similar to that, it's even harder for me to find people that also match like my true to who I am self. And I'm not saying that like being true to who you are like makes you better, it's this magic cheat code to life, because I do think that there are a lot of blessings and a lot of curses that come with it. But like you were the same person no matter who was in the room.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. I think meeting you as well, you were very real and raw from the very beginning. And I think, that's what attracted us to each other as friends. But you're absolutely right. And I think, authenticity is a filter. And I think most people avoid it because it forces honesty about who we are and what we want and what we're not really willing to tolerate, especially today's dating culture. Everyone's performing all the time, we're curating personalities and pretending to always not care. And that's the problem, we're always just acting chill, saying less so we don't scare someone away, and I think that's not what confidence is. That's more fear-based. That's where we really go wrong.
Was there a moment that you stopped caring what people think, and when?
In high school, it was hard for me to be fully true to myself because, that's the age where there's so much comparison and insecurity. But once I realized that I was not attracting the right friends and partners, I started becoming deeply true to who I really am. And I'm not going to say that was easy, but I think being authentic will repel some people, but that's the point, right? It attracts the right ones that you want to surround yourself with. Authenticity creates clarity, and clarity creates clearer intentions.
About like a year ago, maybe, is when I was like, you know what? I'm done caring what other people think. I'm who I am. Take it or leave it. So I definitely think I had to hit a point where I was like, none of this life is like your life. Like, this is my life. I'm not worried about what so and so at so and so thinks of my TikTok post. Do you think authenticity is something you're born with or something that you grow into?
I think authenticity isn't something you're fully born with or something you suddenly learn. Because I think you're born with instincts and preferences and, natural ways of being. And, if you think back to when you were a child, you realize, authenticity came really easy because you're not self-monitoring as much as you are when you're older. And I think as you grow, especially in environments like school, social circles, social media, especially, you learn what's rewarded, you learn what's judged, and what's safer to hide in some way. That's when authenticity gets buried. But what about you? What do you think?
So I think when it comes to whether or not you're born being authentic or is it something you grow into, I would say everybody's born being authentic, right? You don't know any better. But I think the way like today's culture with the internet, with all of the access we have to so many things and the comparison culture and being able to see what so and so accomplished and this person's doing in life and this person, it can almost like beat authenticity out of you, right? The big saying is fake it till you make it. So it's almost like we're all trying to fake it until we make it. But I would say you're born being authentic. As you go through school and you get bullied or this and that happens, you're almost shaped or you get criticism, you get laid off, whatever. So I think that it's something you are born with 100% and then you almost lose it. And then you get to a point where you almost kind of grow back into it, right? Like in high school, I would say I wasn't that authentic. Like I was trying to match what others were doing or fit this like narrative. And it got to a point where that's when I was like, this is me. And so it definitely was something I was born with. It went away due to shaping of like outside circumstances. I let what was going on and not what was inside change me. And also like with my faith, I feel like my reminder of who God says I am helped bring it back. And as you get older, you learn who you really are and you learn like what you really want, but you have to learn how to maintain authentic while going through that kind of growth phase. So let's talk about the pros to being authentic.
Oh, that's a great question. The pros of being authentic. I mean, oh my gosh, I feel like I can go on and on about this one. I think when, you're authentic, if we're talking about dating in this generation, you're not auditioning for love. It just comes to you when you're being you. And I think that's extremely powerful. You're not negotiating your values to anybody. Being very clear from the start and knowing your morals and not changing for anybody, that's also very powerful. You attracting the right one for you, and you're not shrinking just to be chosen. And it also, it's building trust faster than chemistry ever really will. If you think about it, chemistry is something that can be easily manufactured where authenticity can't.
I feel like the biggest one is that you attract the right people so much faster and you also repel the wrong people much quicker.
People feel it right away when you're being real. Going back to what you said, when you met me from the start, you knew right away, right? And I can say the same about you. It's something you just feel.
People either love you or they don't, and that honestly, it saves so much time.
In a world full of so many mixed signals, clarity is so attractive. I could speak for a woman. It's very powerful to not have or give any mixed signals to anybody. Jumping into a friendship or a relationship and being so true to what you believe. Think about how attractive that is when you meet a man and he's just so real from the start, doesn't change around certain friends. It's attractive. The hard truth about all of this is if being yourself keeps scaring people away, you're not too much. You're just not for them. So I actually have a question for you. Do you trust people more when you don't feel like you have to filter yourself around them as much?
I do trust people more when I don't have to filter myself around them. I feel like it's also more like a comfortability thing. Like if I feel like I'm comfortable enough to truly be myself, which I feel like I'm pretty much myself in all environments, but if I feel like you're also truly being yourself more, I definitely trust you more when I feel like you're being real and when I don't have to put up a filter or try and adjust what I'm saying or thinking to kind of match you. So I would say, yes, I do trust people more when I don't have to like filter myself. Do you think you trust people more when you don't have to filter yourself around them?
Yeah, absolutely. And I also think you're not calculating your responses as much or protecting parts of yourself, which I think really signals safety for us. Safety is the foundation of trust for us. It's not just emotional trust, but relational trust as well. You know, the sense that you'll be accepted without editing who you are, right? So, yeah, I would say, you know, when you can be unfiltered with someone, you don't just trust them more, you trust the relationship more.
Have you noticed that people open up to you faster too? Like, do you think that when you're real, people decide to open up and kind of be their true selves towards you quicker because you're so real? And do you think that's a pro?
Well, yeah, I definitely think that's a pro. Yeah, like almost always. I think people can sense pretty fast when they don't have to impress you or perform or protect themselves around you. And I know for me that's really important. You know, I couldn't be friends or in a relationship with someone where I feel like I have to perform around you all the time. I don't think that relationship would ever last or friendship would ever last personally. But I think, you know, your honesty also gives them permission to drop their guard because you've already shown them it's safe to be truly them in your presence. And if you really think about it, being real also removes that hierarchy. You know, you're not positioning yourself as above or better than anybody else. You're just truly honest in who you are. But is there any situation where you felt you know, being authentic and truly real to you, people have opened up more?
Yes, so there are probably quite a few situations where people open up to me because they hear that I'm real and I'm authentic and like it feels like almost like a safe space. So I feel like even strangers are quicker to open up because you know like in today's world everybody's like how are you and the basic answer is good, but like I'll be like I'm hanging on by a thread, barely surviving, and then that makes them want to say, "Oh yeah, actually this week's been awful and I got this problem and this problem, this problem." But when you're just like, "Yeah, my week's great." It's like it probably isn't, but we're so accustomed to just faking it and giving the right answer. So when I hit them with like, yeah, I don't even know how I'm standing here right now, then they're 10 times more likely to open up. But I think being authentic means fewer people, but better people. And yeah, it can feel lonely at times, but the connections you have do actually feel real. But that's also where the cons come in.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's why a lot of people struggle with being authentic is the fear of losing people. It isn't easy. That's something that people don't really say enough. You know, you lose people when you stop filtering yourself all the time. And rejection tends to happen faster, which is normal. And sometimes your circle will get smaller. But even with all of that, the trade-off is choosing alignment over comfort.
It's almost like authenticity has this like rep that when you're authentic, everything is rainbows and butterflies. But I do think that there are a lot of curses in the blessing. It's easy for people to misunderstand you. I do feel like oftentimes I get called like too much by a lot of people. So that kind of either scares people away or they're not ready to be truly open or they don't want to share what's like really going on. So that is kind of like a negative to an extent where people are like, yeah, that's too much for me. I don't want it. And like you're not for everyone. Not everyone is going to like you for you. So you also take on that. You take on being authentic by knowing that that's going to push people away. Like you can't win them all when you're completely yourself and being authentic and all the filters are off. All of the picture perfect, trying to look like one way. It's like the Stepford Wives, right? Like everything is so in order and so perfect. But when you're coming in and you're disrupting order, you already know there's going to be judgment and backlash from it.
Mm-hmm.
Truthfully, like sometimes authenticity costs you friendships, relationships.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I really wanted to get into, you know, ways in which we're losing authenticity in today's generation. For me, I so badly wish I lived in a different decade. But, you know, I think today, the biggest way that we are losing the true authenticity of who we are is performative living on social media. I think social media is to blame for a lot of things today, and it's so sad to say because I think there's so many pros of social media. But I think as far as Instagram plays a huge role in this, we're rewarded today for being aesthetic and agreeable, right? Over time, people start creating a version of themselves and confusing validation with identity. And I think on social media, we constantly feel the need to look better. The comparison with social media is huge. We always want to edit this about ourselves and edit that and be skinnier or have a smaller nose or whatever, and it's sad because you're creating a version of yourself that is not really you on social media, and then you meet people in person and that's not them, so it's the catfishes of the world. And it's so sad to say that people feel the need to alter what they look like or how they act because of social media today.
Totally agree. Social media, though, it didn't make us fake, it just rewarded it. Everyone is branding themselves now instead of like being themselves. And it's like face app. Like if the pictures don't look aesthetically pleasing, everyone's gonna judge you. If you don't get enough likes, like you're not gonna. So you're doing what you think works. We don't ask who I am anymore. We now ask what works. I don't care who I am when I post. I got to know what's going to work for the algorithm, for the likes, for the comments, for the randoms, and why. Because that's not being authentic. It's trying to go viral. Being real doesn't go viral as fast as being palatable. So maybe you can go viral, but you're selling the internet a lie, essentially. So you're losing authenticity, but there's a lot of pressure on social media, the internet, your job, where you're at in life. So we're faking it and we're being what we think other people want to be or see or what works, but like not true to ourselves. Authenticity doesn't die overnight. It gets slowly diluted.
Absolutely.
Like, what do you think about comparison culture? Do you think that that is killing who we truly are because we're trying to compare ourselves to thousands and thousands of people that we see online, TikTok, YouTube, podcasts, celebrities on TV? What do you think comparison culture is doing to diluting authenticity?
Yeah, I think when you're constantly measuring yourself against other people, your focus starts to shift. You start asking yourself, how do I stack up, instead of what actually feels right for me? And I think over time that quiets your intuition and replaces it with borrowed standards of success, beauty, and worth. And I think today comparison turns identity into a competition and editing yourself to keep up with today's standards instead of being true to what you naturally are or what you want to be. And I think, the more that we compare ourselves to others, easier it becomes to abandon our own values in life. But yeah, I don't know. Do you think, back to the social media aspect of all of this, do you think social media has made it harder for us to be real, or do you think it kind of just exposes those who aren't real?
I feel like social media doesn't make it harder to be real because it does expose people who aren't. However, social media is very misleading. So if I don't know you in person, your social media can seem like that is who you truly are, and then I get you in person and I'm like, that is not at all the person that you're representing yourself online. So social media gets very misconstrued, and I feel like it's almost to the point where we can't find the line between black and white to like determine, is that real or is that who they really are? So it definitely probably makes it harder to be real, but I think it makes it almost harder to figure out who's real and who's not, because you see this like persona. They're trying to fit a brand, they're faking it. But unless you know them and you know who they really are, it looks real online. It definitely makes it harder to want to post your real self online. Social media makes you feel like you need to fit what everybody else is doing. It's comparison culture. So I think social media makes it harder to be real, but it doesn't necessarily make it easier to expose who is real and who isn't.
Yeah, I think it does both in different ways. You know, I think social media definitely makes it harder to be real because it's essentially rewarding performance, right? I think that's all, you know, like you said, we're posting things just to hope to get likes, and if we don't get likes, you know, the post comes down, right? We're all kind of editing ourselves for approval, and over time it pulls people away from their real selves. But, you know, at the same time, it's also exposing who isn't real. When someone's identity depends solely on validation, it shows in the inconsistency. You know, the shifting opinions based on what's trending today. And I think the biggest takeaway from today's conversation is that authenticity isn't about being perfect or fearless. It's just about being honest with yourself, most importantly. And I think in a world that constantly pulls us toward comparison, choosing to be real is a quiet act of courage.
I love this conversation, but since it's just you and me, question for our listeners. Are you the same person everywhere, or are you editing yourself to fit in? Leave a comment below. We would love to hear from you. And if this episode resonated with you, or maybe it feels like something you should send to somebody you know, please share this episode. Make sure you follow and subscribe to Unsupervised. And remember, keep choosing alignment over approval. Align with yourself, forget the approval of others, and keep staying on that route. Confidence isn't loud, it's consistent. Thank you for watching Unsupervised. If you like real conversations, honest takes, and zero filters, you're in the right place.
Thank you guys for watching Unsupervised, and make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and we can't wait to hear what you guys think.